Welcome to the Blue Cafe. This is for the haters. We're not conceding, just giving you something to shut you up so we can go back to our comment-heavy paradise in peace. We will feed you. Believe us. Now, on to the story. She treated her ex-boyfriend with such disdain, I should have seen this coming. I was in an unhappy relationship for 5 years when I met Em. She had just moved to Berlin with her boyfriend. In my previous relationship, I was unfaithful and unhappy. I felt trapped and was constantly looking for a way out. And along came Em. We met on a site as mentioned before. She was in a relationship that had become stagnant, and she had just moved to a new city to start fresh with her boyfriend. We spoke for a month by message, growing our connection to each other. And after 1 month, my previous relationship ended. I waited a week and then I finally agreed to meet Em. She came over to the apartment I shared with my ex, and that began her 4-month-long affair with me. She went behind his back, all in the name of her knowing what she wants from life without considering the mental torment she put him through. When she finally mustered the courage to end her relationship, she and I entered into one straight away. She moved in with me into the place I still shared with my ex, and she kept on going back to him constantly, back and forth. Her ex finally moved out of their place, and I gave up the contract on my place to move in with her there. We lived for 3 months before we decided to up and move to France together, her home country. When we moved, my work took a hit, and she found herself paying for everything, food and rent, and as she was unemployed, it was not sustainable. My work suffered for months, and we ended up forever in a financial hole. We cut back on everything, and to top it off, she unexpectedly fell pregnant, which we had no choice but to terminate. Eventually, we ended up moving out of our home and into a house that her uncle owned next door to him. As Christmas ended, my work began to pick up again, and she was happy. She could spend money and we could enjoy life's little pleasures. That something had stained our relationship from the time before, when money was an issue. My work again took another hit, and we were again forced to cut back. She took a job in Monaco at a super yacht company, which made me paranoid as I was not a multimillionaire and she would be surrounded by them all day, every day. Eventually, my paranoia and jealousy ate me alive. I became obsessed with where she was, who she was with, and what she was doing. I read messages on her phone and often found myself tracking her Find My iPhone, sometimes for days at a time. My emotional issues started to show to a point where I could no longer hide them. We would fight about it. She would go for dinners with rich men, and there was nothing I could do about it. One night, it all came to a head. I lost a large client because he sold his company. It kicked me hard because this client had kept us afloat for months, and all of a sudden it was over. When she came home from work, I told her about it. She screamed at me for what seemed like a lifetime. She told me she found me unambitious. She told me she wants a man who can afford to buy her $100K car and all the Chanel bags she ever wanted. She told me I was boring and negative. All this from a girl who has never had to work for anything and has been entitled her entire life. Needless to say, her words hurt. I had already grown paranoid that I wasn't enough for her financially, and that confirmed it for me. So the next day when she went to work, I spent the entire day pining over what she said, what I did, and where I wanted to go from there. I wrote 2 letters, the first explaining my intention to leave unless our relationship couldn't be fixed, the second saying goodbye to her. When she came home, there was tension in the air. I asked her to sit down and I proceeded to give her the first letter as she read it. She burst into tears. And I feel she fixated on the sentence where I said I want to leave instead of the rest of the letter claiming I wanted to fix things. She told me she didn't want to do this anymore. And that began our breakup. The day after we broke up, we were both in a state of limbo. She wasn't entirely sure of her decision, and I wasn't entirely sure either. She had a friend. His name is JK. JK is a very rich man. He owns a very large company in Germany, and he gave her and her ex an apartment in Berlin. He also gave her a truck for us to move with. She always told me never to be weary of JK as he was just a friend and a nice guy. The day after Abu JK invited her to dinner after at the Monaco Yacht Show. She agreed and went. When she came home, she told me the dinner was wonderful because he bought an expensive bottle of wine, €700, and drove her home in his Maserati. She told me he asked her to stay in his €19 million villa. But she said no because I respect you. The second night she again went for dinner with him and came home with the same story, and while I was grateful that she came home, I was furious that I could see what was about to happen. The next night he again invited her for dinner. She told me that dinner was next to his place at a restaurant. I knew that tonight was the night, and as she was getting ready, she shaved her lower part and put on a bad girly dress. I begged her not to duck him, and the only thing she could say was, "I'm not planning anything. I'm single now." She left, and as I still had access to her Find My iPhone, I tracked her down, and she never went to a restaurant. She went straight to his place. It was game over. When she got home, I asked her outright if she ducked him. She paused and told me not to ask. I kept asking, and she finally told me. I was filled with rage. I put my fist through the shower window. I punched holes in the wall. How could she do this? I kept asking myself. The girl I loved ducked the one guy who I never needed to worry about and was just a friend. After she took her shower, she got in bed with me, and all I could smell was the scent of another man on her. She showed no remorse, no care for the fact I was breaking inside. She told me that if I wanted to live in this house, then it is something I am just going to have to deal with. I wasn't in a position to move out, and she knew that I had no money. I had no friends here, as it was always her, and I was 24/7. So my options were limited to staying here with her. After that first night where she went to him, it continued not just with him, but with multiple different guys. It became increasingly hard over time. She would spend time with me and then get a phone call or a message and start getting ready to go and meet another guy. My mental state continued to deteriorate. I stopped eating, I stopped sleeping. Each time she would go out, I would sit and wait for her, worrying until she came home, and when she finally returned, she would brag about her encounter, how he treated her like such a girl, and she loved it. I cried and cried and cried until I could take no more and found myself a job in a bar. I saw this as not only an opportunity to put myself in a position to move out, but also to give myself some headspace. Needless to say, the bar job didn't last long. 2 weeks to be exact. They fired me because they noticed I was having a hard time. I was clumsy, distracted. Even the most menial of jobs couldn't keep me together. This was all going on. At the same time, I was trying to find a place to live. That in itself was a challenge. Each time I would find a place, I wouldn't meet the requirements through lack of proper paperwork, lack of work, lack of place to live, and continuous torture from the girl I love and who apparently loved me. Each time watching her go off to other men, coming home and bragging about it, continued my downward spiral. Still not eating, not sleeping, and feeling anxious all day. She saw what it was doing to me, and still she continued her justification, always the same: you should just move out. One day I found a place to live in a small studio which was perfect for the dog, and my family paid 3 months advance and all was set. I was due to leave on November 1st. As my work is home-based, I needed to arrange the internet. This caused yet more problems, and installation of that internet has been put back to the 21st. In the final week of living with her, it was the most emotionally challenging week. She was going out every night and sometimes not coming home at all. When she did come home, she was covered in marks and bruises. It pains me to see her like this. She would suggest we have dinner together and talk about things, only to eat or not come home, or to cancel so she could go out with someone else. The day before I was due to leave, I told her it was our last night together. She promised to stay with me, only to change her mind an hour later, claiming I needed some fresh air. That fresh air turned into 6 hours, and she finally came home wearing a new pair of earrings given to her as a gift from a man she had just ducked. It broke me for the last time. Yesterday morning when she left for work, I rushed out of bed, having not slept the night before, packed my life into boxes and moved to my new apartment. I guess something triggered in her mind as she called me when she was at work, asking me if I was leaving today. I told her yes. She asked if I would be there when she got home from work to say goodbye. I told her no. And she began crying and screaming down the phone. How could you do this to me? You're going to torture me while I'm at work. How can you ghost me like that? This coming from a girl who has deliberately tortured me for 6 weeks. She asked to meet last night and I agreed. In retrospect, I regret that all she did was shout at me for not fixing the sink for 3 months. We parted ways, hugged and cried, and I watched her drive away. Over the past 6 weeks I have developed PTSD to some effect. I have dreams about the sound of her makeup bag when she's getting ready. I have nightmares of the things she has said to me, and I had even reached a point where I began twitching whenever I saw her. It has been nothing but an emotional offense for 6 weeks. Last night was the first night in what seemed like forever that I actually slept. It was the first night in my new home. I woke up this morning less anxious than before. And although I miss her like crazy, and she has been a terrible human being towards me, I still can't manage to pull myself out of the hole I'm in. Today is the first day of North Carolina. I missed the sound of her voice, I miss her face. I know I should have moved out on day 1, but the choice wasn't there. Don't be like me, have a backup in place, have financial savings away in case something like this happens. It is going to take me forever to recover from this, longer than I imagined. But for the love of God, if you ever get the opportunity to walk away and ghost, then take it, especially if you find yourself in my position. Walk away and never look back. Always see the red flags when you meet someone. And if something doesn't smell right about that person, then see that you do not get overcome by the lust you feel towards someone. Fundamentally, people cannot change. She treated her ex-boyfriend with such disdain. And I should have seen this coming. I wrote this as a broken man. Do not fall for someone that has issues like this, you will end up broken. And please, to all those thinking of breaking North Carolina, don't do it. We hope you have enjoyed today's episode. Please comment, like and subscribe. Cheers. Have a wonderful day or night, wherever you are.